Welcome back. This is module 1, or as I like to call it, the how the hell did I get here module. In this module, we will discuss how most of us, if not all of us, got here and why we would even need a survival guide in the first place. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Matt, and I and my team are hoping you can understand our southern accents without a translator. I'll try real hard to articulate for your sake. I've been off benzodiazepines and any other psychoactive drugs for going on 5 years now, and I am never looking back. I will never ever go back there. Now don't get me wrong, I'm far from bragging. Actually, this is far from me bragging at all, as I'm no better or any stronger than any of you are. I've had massive ups and downs in my journey with psychoactive medicines, and will freely admit, mostly downs. I really can't count the mistakes I made over the years concerning the drugs I was really hoping would help me. In fact, during my benzo withdrawals, I did almost everything wrong. So as a bonus, you get the benefits of learning what not to do based on my very painful experiences. You're welcome. My goal, and what I feel is my calling, is to lead others through benzo withdrawals, repeating none of the mistakes I made. Now, I'll be negligent and morally wrong if I misled you in any way concerning your personal health care, and that's something I simply will not do. The benzo game is too dangerous, too life-changing, and requires delicate handling. In rare cases, it's a matter of life and death, and my team and I are very dedicated to your well-being. So with full disclosure, my lawyer's making me say this before we truly get down and dirty, I am not a doctor or medical professional, and there are no letters after my name. If you or your loved one is showing any signs of suicide or inflicting harm upon themselves, please stop this program immediately and either dial 911 or the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. I cannot stress this strongly enough. I value your well-being above everything, and you're the real priority here. Like I said, I'm a benzo survivor, and after my withdrawals, I seriously feel blessed to even be here with you today. It was touch and go, I'm not gonna even lie. When my withdrawals were over, I devoted my life to helping others navigate their way through the often confusing and life-changing benzo maze. Over the years, I've researched, studied, and coached others to a better life, free from this crippling effects of this drug. This might be a good time to say that there are no labels here. We're all fighting the same fight, and you're one of my people, whether you like it or not. Whether your personal battle began on the streets or in a doctor's office is not really the issue. Benzos don't discriminate who they injure, whose life they upset, disrupt, and destroy. They cross all borders, ages, sexes, races, and religions. The drug is the issue, and there's no judgment here as to how the hell you got here. Because no, I love you all. Now, why listen to me? If you're a skeptic like me, you question people. Hell, I question everything, especially now. For some, it's in our genetic makeup. I'll just take a second to let you know I do indeed know what I'm talking about. I'm going to share pieces of my story and try not to bleed out here in the front of the camera. So most of my adult life, I've battled depression. I mean real ugly depression. It's been downright paralyzing at times. On top of the depression, somewhere in my teenage years, I developed massive anxiety coupled with a nice side dish of OCD. Despite some massive mental struggles, I've lived a pretty full life. I was blessed enough to live overseas for many years and have seen and done a lot of cool things. By my early 20s, I was a middle school social studies teacher. Some days with my issues, I really don't know how I made it through the school day, and that's just a fact. I hid those issues fairly well, like so many of you, just to make a living, keep your friends, your family, and to get by. Anyway, in my mid-20s, I was put on antidepressants, just your standard SSRIs. I could name them all, but the list would be as long as exciting as a drugstore receipt, so we're not going to do that. Just know they didn't really help. Mostly, the antidepressants just made me tired, apathetic. Life was sort of a haze on them. They took the sharp edges off of life, but mostly they just left me drifting through life, through the years, sleepy and sedated. I still had some passion left in life when I could keep my eyes open, and when I was 30, I left teaching. Anyone who spent a bit of time with 7th graders know it's a challenge to say the least, and I'd had my fill of that adventure for one lifetime. I needed a different adventure, and I sure found one. So eventually I left teaching to fulfill a lifelong desire to be a firefighter, and in the process I became an EMT as well. I loved my job and hid my issues once again, kind of like some kind of dirty secret. You wouldn't have seen me on the job and have ever guessed the turmoil, the daily battle going on inside me. But it was, and on many shifts, I was just hanging on. The fact is, the stresses of being a first responder made middle school look really tame in comparison. The job took a toll on my body and mind, and over the years, the old issues started to creep back in, but this time, so much worse. On the job, we often experience and see things that the average person will be unable to comprehend, and it just kind of adds up. I'll spare you the ugliness of it all, but just know that it's a lot. It's a lot to process, a lot to sort out in your mind. So near the end of my fire career, the anxiety started to grab me by the throat the night before I went on shift. I couldn't sleep, my mind was racing, etc., etc. Soon my anxiety was starting to affect my job performance, and in this job, people could get really hurt or really dead really quick. Long story short, my doctor put me on a benzodiazepine for my mounting anxiety. Klonopin, to be more precise. This particular drug is known to be one of the worst to withdraw from, and also, like most benzos, as we will discuss, should only be used for a very short time. I was clueless, as were most of you, to even the facts about benzos. I didn't do my homework, I got lazy, life got busy, etc., etc. I treated this new drug like I did other antidepressants and just kept taking it. I really didn't even understand the drug class, to be honest, which is embarrassing for someone in emergency medicine. So for 3 years, I took my benzo religiously, pouring an extremely powerful drug that is meant to be in your body for weeks at best into my system. I had no idea of the dangers and pitfalls of benzos, but I was going to have to learn the hard way. And I get an amen from all of you out there that have to learn the hard way. This guy does. After a decade of firefighting, my brain and body just sort of gave out. I was overstressed, overworked, and my anxiety was nearing dangerous levels where I was simply shutting down at work. I was forgetting things, important things like directions, IV needle sizes, protocols, and so on. I was also getting very emotional, not only about the changes in my own body, but about many of the calls I went on. I was a train wreck, and one day it all came to a head the night before my shift was to begin at 7 the next morning. I called my lieutenant, a close friend of mine, during yet another panic attack and just sort of gushed out all I had been hiding. He was naturally concerned, and the wheels started rolling to get me some help. Long story short, the help didn't help, and I had to face some hard truths right then and there. I knew it was a matter of time before I hurt someone or myself, and it scared me to death thinking of hurting others. I didn't care at all about my own well-being, which in itself is troubling and in retrospect. After a month of struggling and sleepless nights over what to do, the proverbial writing was on the wall. I resigned. Over the years, I struggled immensely with the fact that in the end, I couldn't handle it and that I wasn't tough enough. I filled my head with all sorts of negative self-talk, in fact. After so much learning and research, I now know that I don't believe I was any weaker than anyone else in my fire department or in the world. I attribute much of my complete and total shutdown to the benzodiazepines I was on, as nothing else in my life had really changed. After my resignation from the job I loved, I spiraled further, but took that little white pill like clockwork every morning with my coffee. Eventually, I was doing so badly at this whole life thing, I ended up in a mental health clinic for a few weeks. 3 days before my release date, the clinic doctor pulled me off of Klonopin cold turkey. What his reasons for this were are still very unclear to me, but the lack of forethought nearly cost me my life, and I am not exaggerating. Quitting cold turkey or hard stop is the absolute worst thing you can do to your body, and it can literally kill you. Many have not lived through the mistake I made. Later, we will look at the wheres, whens, and whys, but stopping any benzo without tapering extremely slowly is beyond dangerous. I'll actually call a halt right here to reiterate the fact that it should never be done. Your life could literally be at stake. Like so many of you, I've been through antidepressant withdrawals, your SSRIs, etc. They can be devastating in their own right, but benzo withdrawal hit me like a hammer between the eyes. Like on the floor moaning for it to just end ugly. Nothing could have prepared me for what was to come. I wouldn't have believed it if you told me. The next days, weeks, and months were the most challenging of my life. Challenging is actually too nice a word. This experience was hellish, if I can be honest. I was alone, scared, and extremely confused over what was going on in my own body and mind. More than that, I was really hurting. 45% of benzo users will go through what is called protracted withdrawal syndrome, and lucky me, my body chose this path to go down. In the long list of withdrawal symptoms, I hit just about every single one of them. I'm just lucky, I guess. I'll be transparent. I also did almost everything wrong in terms of alleviating my withdrawal symptoms. I'm a grin and bear it kind of person and was used to just sucking it up when I was in pain. I was tough. I don't need others, blah, blah, blah. I hear some of you out there agreeing with me. Many of you understand just keeping it to yourself, not bothering others. All my people have their own unique problems. Why add to theirs? Well, just sucking it up is great for a stubbed toe, but my friends, with benzo withdrawals, it's not a good or sustainable plan at all. Let's just say I wasn't prepared, and that's putting it lightly. So now I'm out of the clinic with not a whole lot to keep my spirits up. I got in my own head pretty quick, and that's never good. Full transparency, I wasn't just scared, I was terrified. Like many of you, I can get very distracted by life. I mean, really distracted. I'm the type that if I'm reading or writing and a bird flies over, it's all over. One of my big weaknesses was not doing my homework with medicine, and I really dropped the ball when it came to researching the benzo withdrawal experience. Hell, I'd never even heard about the issue and came in essentially clueless. Not only was I confused as to what was happening in my body, there was no way to quantify it, especially with an issue so incredibly vague and hard to explain anyway. I was afraid no one would believe me, and even had a doctor tell me it was all in my mind when I pretty much pleaded with him to explain what was going on. He told me I was hyper-focused on something that wasn't there and to calm down. Yeah, right, pal. I don't think I'd make this stuff up from the head for the fun of it, but when you're that vulnerable and that hurt, you believe those in positions of trust. I think this doctor's reaction to my many questions made me feel that this would be the whole world's response to the issue, so I stopped asking medical professionals altogether. If these people I trusted told me I was fabricating this, then I had to believe them, right? It's all in my head, right? So when the withdrawals took over completely, I isolated myself as a response. No wife, no kids, now no job, not even a goldfish, and no hope. I literally went into my home, locked the door, and stayed completely isolated for weeks, just sweating the poison out. Big mistake. I didn't want to tell my family how bad my situation had gotten, mainly because I knew there was nothing they could do. Why bother people, right? I'm telling y'all, I did it all wrong. To make it worse, I went down the internet rabbit hole on benzo forums, which were just screaming gloom and doom. So I sat there behind a locked door and just took the beating like a boxer who was fighting way outside his weight class. To be frank, it was stupid of me. It could have cost me my life, a life I'm now very much appreciating and enjoying. So I've lived it, folks, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I wouldn't expect you to listen to me if I hadn't. I also know it's downright foolish to not seek help for a better life off of benzos. Now, I know there are ways to take the offensive against the benzos, and we're going to bring them to you. The benzo issue is getting bad out there, folks, and as we'll see, the situation has not been good for a long time. Some experts have gone so far as to call benzodiazepines the new opioid crisis, which is pretty sobering. The crisis is very real, and the skeptics are losing more and more ground every day as millions struggle with what has become a massive medical crisis. Before we get started, I urge you once again to work closely with your physicians for the best possible outcome. If you are the caretaker to someone on benzodiazepines, especially if they are in withdrawals, please keep close tabs on your loved ones. Remember, if your loved one is experiencing benzo withdrawal symptoms, they are not themselves and may take uncharacteristic steps to just make the pain stop. None of this was meant to scare you, because my team and I are devoted to making this process easier, and if implemented, it will. My job here is to help you. Your job right now in this fight of your life is to do the work. Together with your doctor and loved ones, we can get you to a full and happy benzo-free life. With that being said, let's jump into Module 2 and look at a short history of benzos.